Okay. I yeah. Good morning, everyone from Sweden. It's an important day to join and deliver this important side event on development on Catchment Resilience Index for optimal river catchment rehabilitation and restoration. This session is organized as part of the Stockholm official World Water Week in collaboration with the Indian Council of Agriculture Research and the Central Dryland Agriculture based in Hyderabad. And the purpose of this session is mainly to look at how do we enhance resilience, while not at a basin scale, but more looking at a catchment. This is where the interesting elements of the climate shocks and also the prevailing local development, but equally there is also lack of development in far the lower administrative catchment unit when you look at in a nutshell. So what we would like to maybe the next slide. Sahana, can you move to the next slide?
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Yeah, okay. So we have an excellent line of panel members joining today from India, various parts of the institutions, while they will be introducing during the moderation session led by Dr. Alok Sika. And prior to that, I would like to ask Dr. Suresh Chaudhary, Deputy Director General NRM, to say a few words on the session as such and the collaboration of this initiative prior we go into a technical presentation. Over to you, Dr. Chaudhary.
Thank you very much, Dr. Giriraj. Hope I'm audible perfectly.
Yes.
So first, let me say that the EV and colleagues, they are organizing this very, very important event today, although we call it as a side event, but it's very, very important because catchment resilience is very, very important aspect so far climate management is concerned. And coming up with a very good index is the purpose of today's discussion. And when we talk of river basin or river catchment rehabilitation, it becomes very, very important to come up with some kind of index or indices or integrated index that can provide details, and it captures very well the challenges like drought, flood. These are the two important things we are experiencing in whole South Asia and more so in Asia Pacific region. Also, the risk associated with floods and drought, they are making agriculture and also the agricultural allied sectors is very difficult and big challenge. Overuse of chemicals, excessive use of fertilizers, and also the specific iron toxicity in pockets like arsenic, like the fluoride, and also so many pollutants are coming up because of more and more deeper aquifer we are exploring, and therefore the surface pollution because of water is also becoming a very important challenge. Because of very frequent kind of disasters, agricultural disaster, and also big natural disasters like landslides and cloud bursting. So biodiversity loss is being observed all across the agroecologies and ecosystems. And this really require a kind of detailed understanding in terms of capturing the elements of resilience all across these systems, whether it is a catchment, whether it is a river basin, or which is at a regional scale. And if you want to capture all these things, then you require a single value index or some kind of weight-based some kind of numbers that can provide you and give idea for priority investments in different regions. So from that point of view, today's discussions and also involvement of various panelists in this, definitely I'm looking forward for very good discussion in this and coming up with a very good index and also capturing all different elements of the whole catchment and whole catchment rehabilitation sector. So I'm looking forward for very good presentations from our very esteemed panelist and also a broad presentation on concepts prototype development of catchment resilience by Giriraj Amarnath. So all the very best to all the speakers, and definitely together we'll be able to come up with some kind of handy tool. And this will be a great achievement at the time of this World Water Week, which is happening in Stockholm. Unfortunately, I'm not able to participate there in physical mode, but certainly it's a pleasure to be here in virtual mode. So looking forward for very good discussion today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chaudhary, for the word of encouragement and support. Yes, indeed, you are supposed to be here due to some limitations. You are not able to participate with us. So I would go back to the presentation again. Sahana, if you can share us the screen, the next slide. Yes. So as this is a evolving program with the Indian Council of Agriculture Research on the need for developing catchment as a specific knowledge product, and the purpose is to ensure how do we really assess the catchment health and the resource optimization. We would like to look at more from the subcatchment, in terms of ecological resilience, and also looking at the infrastructure resilience going forward. So the session would also deliberate in terms of the end of the slide, what kind of specific applications that particularly this index would able to bring, and also specifically explain the role of bringing more multi-institutional collaboration, which is the need of the hour when we talk about basin resilience development into the region itself. And we haven't really come out in terms of the finalized tool, which is work in progress. That's where we have invited the senior experts from India across the various domain who would provide valuable insights and guidance. And again, I believe such tools are very relevant in other developing regions as well. While you look at the catchments are significantly large when it comes to future climate impact, whether it is deforestation or the overall natural resource management need to be looked at. So let me go to the next slide. So why the catchment resilience index we want to do? We want to make sure that across, when you talk about catchment, we do know that the natural resources varying from forest, agriculture, soil, land use, planning, rural development, all they play into a collective role. But how far this can be used as a valuable tool for managing water resources, specifically in the context of climate change impact, and how it would provide future challenges, because whatever we plan for today adaptation intervention may not be sufficient enough to look at in the future years to come. So our concept is to make sure it's not something out of box we are talking about. We want to have two specific areas to look at more collectively. One, we are talking about catchment risk. The other one is catchment resilience aspect. How do we simultaneously look at areas that hazards are rising? Currently, the analysis is done for current climate. We are aiming to look at future climates as well, and looking at how do you look at cascaded impacts of floods, drought, cyclones, heat wave, and many other disasters. So each of those index can be developed for different basins across the world, and how we can bring some more stakeholder perception within this index itself to understand what kind of context in which these resilience measures need to be provided for the policymakers. When we talk about policymakers, it's about the technology, it's about the socioeconomic challenges, it's also about bringing a resilient infrastructure development going forward. So the index at the end of the day would bring, the proposition between the risk and resilience, but a higher the vulnerability, or the vulnerability from the point of human development, agriculture development, and then put together these resilience index would help what catchment need to have additional priorities going forward. And I think going forward, our idea is to make sure that these tools can be useful for watershed development, guiding future projects, how resilience need to be looked at closely. So we have classified into 6 thematic areas when we construct this index. We look at environmental factor, which I just talked about, the physical factors of hazard, socioeconomic, it is basically coming from the socioeconomic census information, and also we could come at a household level information as well. And then the bottom one, which is from blue to green, looks at how do we enhance resilience as an overall across the ecology, the infrastructure, as well as the social resilience of that. So our goal is to make sure reducing the risk and increase the resilience. How do we simultaneously look at a catchment? This is where we are bringing a kind of decision support tool, wherein the user could optimize the planning for a catchment level intervention for rehabilitation and restoration. Can we go to the next slide? So these are different variables that the study has used. We are not going to spend a lot of time around how each and data has been collected, but at different forum, we could bring in more technical sessions around that. But understanding the biophysical, socioeconomic factors, as well as the environmental factors like degradation of the ecosystem, changes in the land use, whether converting forest to agriculture or getting into more degraded land or changes to the biodiversity intactness, etc., has been studied here. Next slide. And in the resilience, we look at how much nature-based solutions are available. Did we build enough adequate capacity coping to the current climate shocks? And how far our designed water storages are sufficient enough to prevent flood, whether it could be a check dam, whether it could be a flood prevention, early warning system. It is both of a soft and a hard adaptation. And how far the communities have been part of this overall preparedness going forward. So these are the work in progress, I would say. You will see the first of its results, but coming months, we would be making sure that this index would be further evaluated and additional indicators would also be taken into account with the states and the central government going forward. Next slide. So we are building a case study of one of the second largest river basin in India called Godavari River Basin. If it's a habitation of more than 65 million people living in this and spread over 1,000, the length of the river is over 1,400 square meter in length, and it's spread across 5 different states. And you can see this is one of the well-studied river basin and one of the well-utilized basin also, I would say, in terms of the storages for hydropower, water for irrigation, etc. But having said that, the climate change poses equal challenges to that. Whether in terms of the natural resource degradation, but equally there is a density of population in the lower catchment have been significantly increased over the period of time. You will see some of our findings. This also calls for how much the natural resources are getting depleted over a period of time. And the studies also shows that over 2,000 billion cubics of water is also going out to the ocean over years of time. 1,000 million cubic, not a billion, 1,000 million cubics of storage water is going out to the ocean. This also calls, while we have over 1,000 plus small, large storages or exist, the study also calls for how we look at protecting specific catchments through this index and intervention, how we can go forward in terms of ecological resilience, wherein more water scarcity challenges in the dry season can be prevented. Next slide. So I would ask my colleague Sahana to go a bit more detail on the analysis, and then I would come back where this application is going to head and what level of support and guidance and coming from the experts will be spoken further. Over to you, Sahana.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Giriraj. So I'll be taking you through some of the technicalities of the study. Here from the Godavari River Basin overview, here we see the average annual rainfall for the period 1990 to 2023. And here we see a huge spatial variability in the rainfall starting from west to east and north to south as well. And the same annual average. Sorry. I need to move my slide. I'm unable to go to the next one.
You can scroll down, there is animations there.
Yeah, so this is the average annual maximum temperature for the period 1990 to 2023. Again, here we see a huge spatial variability in the temperature extremes as well. And because of this huge spatial variability in rainfall, temperature, and other climate variables, the basin is prone to face multi-hazards in terms of droughts, floods, or extreme temperatures and storms. So here we see that most of the lower basins are always prone to multi-hazards. And yeah, so there is a high frequency of different extremes in the basin. So here, looking at the discharge and the basin storage, here we see that there are like around 1,000 plus water storage structures in the basin, with around 33 dams having a higher storage, which is like about 250 BCM. So, and also these water resources structures cater to different projects in as in the irrigation, the hydroelectricity, or environmental resource management. So therefore, there is a multi-sectoral development dependency on the basin's water resources. And coming to the changes in land use, so the basin is dominated by agricultural and forest area. And between 2 decades, if we see the land use change, there is a huge increase in built-up area in many sub-basins in the Godavari. And also the bottom panel of the map, if we see the crop change and the forest change, lot of crop area has been converted in, lot of forest area has been converted into crop area in the Wainganga and the lower sub-basins. Then coming to the changes in population between 2000 and 2022, we see that almost all over the basin, there is a huge increment in the population ranging more than 25%. Then, so with this background, we designed the framework for Catchment Resilience Index that caters to multi-hazards and also assesses the vulnerability of these hazards. So we picked up the precipitation, temperature, and wind speed variables to assess drought, flood, heat wave, and cyclone using different statistical measures and different hazard indices. For drought, we considered the standardized precipitation evapotranspiration index, which accounts for the concurrent deficits in precipitation and exceedances in temperature. And for flood hazard, we considered the rainfall, the standardized precipitation index, which uses the monthly precipitation values. And for heat wave hazard, we considered the 90th percentile of the daily maximum temperature. And for cyclone, we considered the concurrent occurrences of the 95th percentile daily maximum precipitation and daily maximum wind speed. So defining these hazards this way, and also considering the physical factors, socioeconomic factors, and environmental factors, and the sub-indicators under these various factors, we combine them to assess the individual vulnerability to different hazards and ultimately come up with the risk values for every hazard. And then combining these risk values, we get what is called the catchment risk index at the catchment scale. Now with this risk index, we try to include the stakeholder perception on resilience interventions using some weightage mechanism. And then finally, combining the risk and the stakeholder inputs, we have the catchment resilience index, which says how resilient the catchment is. These are the first-hand results on the catchment risk index, which constitutes the multi-hazards. So here we see for the drought risk, from the drought risk map, we see that Wainganga Basin, again, lower Godavari lower and Pranhita and upper Godavari basins are prone to more drought. And coming to the flood risk, again, we see it correlating well with the regions having extreme rainfall conditions, that is the upper Godavari basin, the lower Godavari basin as well. And coming to the heat wave risk, again, the southern and northern parts of the basin are more prone to heat wave risk, corroborating with the extreme temperatures that we saw in the initial slides. And also for the cyclone risks, we see the coastal area is more prone to cyclone risk based on our assessment. And combining all these four risks coming from different hazards, we have the catchment risk index at different catchments. So we have around 400 plus small catchments within the whole Godavari basin. And here from the overall catchment risk index, we see that Wainganga, lower Godavari, the Manjra basin, and the upper Godavari are contains more number of catchments that are under high risk condition. Yeah, so this one is the vulnerability computation method. Again, under every vulnerability component, we have different many indicators, and every indicators behave differently in the way it affects the drought, flood, heat, or cyclone vulnerability. For example, if we pick up the available water content, so a region with higher available water content will reduce the drought vulnerability, whereas for the region with higher water content, it will be more susceptible to flood. And same is the case with other dry and wet extremes, that is heat wave and cyclone. And again, for example, population will affect positively positively to the vulnerability of all the hazards again. So combining every indicator individually, we get the individual vulnerability indices for all the hazards. And so this slide shows the catchment, how we came up with the catchment resilience index at sub-basin wise for a hypothetical case. So this first table that we see, the catchment risk indicators, is derived based on the previous table that we just saw. So this particular table is different for different hazard type, and combining them, we have all the different weightages for different indicators that we saw. Now with this weightages and the risk index, we have the possible list of resilience interventions types. To name some important ones are like water conservation and management, drought resistant crops, the land use planning and management, the early warning systems, or the ecosystem restoration and conservation methods. So for every resilience intervention type for addressing different hazard, we will be considering the stakeholder weights for all hazards. So the stakeholders here can range from, say, the farmers, the government agencies, the risk modelers, the development authorities, etc. So here, as a hypothetical case, we gave our weightages for different catchments for every resilience intervention type. And finally, what we have at the sub-basin scale is the stakeholder perception for resilience. So this catchment risk index that we have from our analysis is combined with the stakeholder perception for resilience. Here, higher value of stakeholder perception resilience means this particular sub-basin requires more resilience intervention. So this is somewhat correlates with the catchment risk index that we assessed. And finally, we combine these two and take the difference from the index 1 to finally come up with the catchment resilience index. So here, higher green values means the basin is more resilient. So to see the initial results, here we see the catchment risk index and catchment resilience index for the prioritization, planning, and management. So from the catchment risk index, the analysis that we did, we see that Wainganga and Lower Godavari Basin are under high risk. And from the catchment resilience index, again, we see that Wainganga and, Wainganga and Lower Godavari Basin have lesser resilience, and also the other basins such as Pranahita and Indravati basins are under high resilience. So the future interventions has to address building the resilience in Wainganga and Lower Godavari basin, and at the same time examining the cost benefits for its prioritization. So from here, Dr. Giriraj will take.
Yeah. So just want to reiterate that this work is still in progress. While there were questions, how does it differs to multi-hazard? Yes, indeed, the framework is similar, but we focus on more catchment related variables. We have collected over 52 catchment sensitive variables across the 5 indicator that the concept we presented. Specifically, if you see this slide, while the lower catchments in the region have lower resilience, this also really highlight while we keep investing more in the lower catchment, the upstream catchment where we may see reserve forest, less habitation, but we also tend to have more investment in the lower basin, not in the upper basin. So this is where again state cooperation is equally important in the upstream catchment, while Pranahita or Indravati or some of the catchment has a potential to increase more resilient that would buffer or mitigate some of the risk happening in the lower part of the basin. That's also the perspective. What you see is a sub-basin analysis, but more when you disaggregate into a sub-catchment areas, you will see much more relevance of how prioritization have to come. So rest of my 2 slides, can we go to the next slide? So having this index in a draft form is available. We have few more months to review this analysis. One of our prioritization is to look at how we make sure the policymaker would invest more in critical zone from the catchment point of view, so that we enhance risk from the point of higher risk and higher resilience that would able to buffer in the years to come. And I think the more disaggregated information at the catchment area would also bring guiding land use zonation and bringing some more regulation, which is still not done in a collective way. There is a lot more studies need to be looked at. And I think in the catchment, we do know a lot of natural resource potential are there, but implementation of nature-based solution would also equally important in resilience building measure. Can we go to the next slide? So I think one certainly this output would also bring is prioritization of various projects that the watershed management program we are trying to bring. So because we know that certain catchments are highly sensitive from shocks with a high infrastructure development, but then when you look at ranking resilience intervention in those catchment, then we would know how much different projects are making or bringing more enhancing resilience for that. And also, this also looks at questions with the experts would also speak later in the review, is to review the overall watershed health and resilience and how far the regeneration of some of the catchments would also be equally have to be prioritized. The last slide I would share. I think a lot comes at the end of the day is the investments. So we need to really show how this index can also show there is a lack of investment in certain catchments where it can bring better resilience. And also future projects can also be justified how the funds need to be allocated based on certain standard indicators like CRI that can go in terms of evidence building, but also bringing effectiveness of interventions in watershed management. So I think this is the last slide. Thank you again. I would now call upon Dr. Alok Sika to take it over for conducting the moderate session where the panel experts are waiting for us. Thank you. Yeah, start.
Hello, hi everyone.
Hello.
Hello. I hope I'm audible to all of you.
Yes, very much.
All right, okay. And visible as well?
Very much.
All right,
Okay.
so, okay. So, all right, so that's reassuring. So, I think you all have listened to this exhaustive presentation rather. And so, first of all, I welcome all of you as a panelist, and thank you all for agreeing to be the panelist. And the panelist we have with us is Marcela. Maybe you, when I'm calling the name, you can just say hello and
Hello.
and Dr. Sharad Jain.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon.
Dr. Marcela is a director of WOTR based out of Pune. And Dr. Sharad Jain is a former director of NIH and currently visiting professor with IIT Roorkee. Dr. Suresh Chaudhary is a Dr. Chaudhary.
Hello. Hello.
He is a Deputy Director General Natural Resource Management with Indian Council of Agricultural Research. And Dr. Rajiv Ahal. Hi, Rajiv.
Hi, good day.
So he is the Director of Natural Resource Management, the GIZ, based in India and Delhi. And Dr. Nitin Bassi, who is the Senior Program Lead for the Sustainable Water Team at the Council on Energy, Environment and Water in New Delhi. So,
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, everyone.
morning. Yeah, for me it's morning, maybe for you guys it's afternoon. So now I think so what we would be doing is that I'll start with the questions, and how much time we have now? We are left with half an hour maximum. So I think let me just first go ahead with the first question, and you have say about 3 minutes max, 2 to 3 minutes, 3 minutes I would say, and if the time is there, I'll come back to you with the second question. So the first, over to you, Marcela. is how do you think and how do you define the catchment resilience in the context of watershed development? Because WOTR and you are pretty much working on watershed management program. And what are the key innovative approaches that you feel can contribute to building resilient catchments and achieving sustainable water management? So over to you, Marcela.
Thank you for inviting me to participate and to share our experiences. How we would define successfully implemented catchment areas would be is after a project is a project or a cluster of watersheds, we would work in a cluster of watersheds and all of these contributing to the catchment. Am I audible? Hi.
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. Yeah. So we would look at the cluster of watersheds, all that contribute to a particular river stream. And to begin with, let's take the within the village. How do they survive after a year of drought, after years of drought and post-project period? For us, catching the sustainability of this long after interventions have been done, how do these micro watersheds, micro catchments, how do they survive? What is the difference between, have the forested areas being restored? How do the rivers flow and for the length of time that the rivers flow? What is the ability of the people who live within the within those catchments? How is their income? How do they benefit by increased income from increased productivity? While productivity and income increases, are they also sustaining the watersheds, the micro catchments, so that this continues for generation to generation? So for us, we would look at reducing erosion, and we could check these out, enhancing water flows, and also groundwater, because the catchments and the treatments would also enhance groundwater recharge to be used at a later time, the improvement in the biodiversity and the ecology and the services. So taking all this as a package, how do the people survive and continue beyond project period? We would also need to consider the management, which is crucial by the people of that catchment area. Do the people continue to protect and restore it? And another way we would also be assessing it is, are the tree covers standing long after the project period, at least in the forest areas where they work towards the water ecosystem? So this would be in just what I'd like to share.
Thank you very much, Marcela, and for being very precise and on the dot on what we do and expect from a watershed management project. Truly, those are the key indicators. And I suppose that those are, in most of them, are embedded into what Sahana and Giriraj have presented. And of course, going forward, they can be further fine-tuned in order to try and see that, because the way I would put it, suppose if something they are taking at the basin scale and then you drill it down to the catchment slave, then of course you can always have certain fine-tuning. So thank you very much, Marcela. And now I move on to the next is to Sharad. Sharad, Jan, for you, I know that in the face of more extreme weather events which are now happening, how can a deeper understanding of catchment hydrology help us better anticipate and mitigate flood or drought risks in our planning efforts which we are adopting in our country? So over to you, Sharad.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to appear in this panel. So before
Always
answering
a pleasure.
oh, thank you. So in my view, it's a very good concept to use this resilience index, because in AR6, IPCC has also supported climate resilient development. So in that sense, I think this concept very well aligns with the latest IPCC recommendations. Now, as a catchment is a dynamic system which keeps on evolving with time, I think CRI also should keep on evolving. So we need to estimate it at maybe some regular time intervals. In that sense, this index consists of four basic parts. One is nature, then infrastructure, society, and governance. And all these interact, and governance also determines how the land use, land cover change will take place, how to involve society. So this question is pertaining to the nature part of this index. And as you rightly said, in future, the extreme events are likely to become more intense, more warming will be there. And that means we need to predict and we need to understand how our catchments should respond when they have more extreme inputs. Now, to do that, we can make use of statistical models, but I think that would be dangerous to rely on statistical models because we may not have data pertaining to the likely events. So a better way and more reliable way would be to have a better understanding of the hydrology of the catchments, how the catchments are going to respond if the inputs are beyond what we have experienced so far. So the soil related factors, for example, the previous speaker has talked about soil erosion, they will change, the soil moisture conditions will change, the response of the catchments to very intense but short duration rainfalls will change. And then, of course, we may have prolonged droughts. So all in all, we really require better understanding, deeper understanding of hydrology to understand how our catchments are likely to respond to the events which we have not seen so far. That's my brief answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jan, and for being so precise and in time. And now I move on to Dr. S.K. Chaudhary, DDG NRM. So, Dr. Chaudhary, given the critical role that agriculture plays in a catchment, particularly in its keeping its health and vulnerability of Indian agriculture to climate change, how do you think that the CRI and the decision support tool that is being developed jointly with ICAR be adopted and integrated into existing agricultural research and extension programs to promote sustainable land and water management practices across the watershed, be it the farm level or at the catchment scale? So over to you, please.
Thank you, Alokji. Thank you very much. In India, when we talk of resilience, it has different dimensions because more frequent extreme weather events, they're happening, droughts, flash floods, they're all part of, integral part of Indian agriculture. Then intensive rainfall events, landslides nowadays, loss of biodiversity, prolonged winters, all these events are occurring very frequently. And every year we are analyzing that different kinds of event and that duration is also varying greatly. With a rising global population as well as Indian population and increased level of urbanization, the socio-economic consequences at the watershed level and also severe and more significant impact now we are observing that what we have observed in the past. And therefore, the roles of institutions and also the roles of research organization is very, very important. Consistent and continuous thinking in this direction is the key factor. And very correctly, ICAR and IMI, we are jointly working on at least drought and floods together and capturing the very important aspects of drought, floods, extreme weather conditions, and other climatic events are now coming up with CRI, which is going to be an important index for defining and also prioritizing in watershed areas this is going to be a key game changer in the area of watershed management. Whenever we go for prioritization in watershed with respect to climate resilience, we do not have any ready tool immediately, although several tools are existing. But in Indian context, what we have seen and what we have jointly developed, the tools like SADMS, also IBFI, these are some tools which are highly reliable and also well tested, and we are getting very good results at scale. So these are a few things which will be very, very important from a climate resilience point of view, and coming up with one index that can capture almost multiple problems in watershed areas, and also help us to quickly understand what is there and how to prioritize it and where to invest. So from that point of view, this initiative of INVI and ICR jointly will lead to significant development in this area. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chaudhary, and for putting these things in a right perspective and also making few suggestions. So I think I move on to my friend Rajiv from GIZ. So Rajiv, given the fact that the GIZ has been involved actively in this watershed and the landscapes and agroecology and drought management. So given the GIS's experience in implementing such projects across diverse Indian landscapes and the geographies, how do you envision this work, particularly on the CRI, to be adapted and scaled to address the unique challenges of different regions in India, and especially considering variations in the climate, socioeconomic conditions, and the governance structures? And on top of this, how do you think that in the ongoing endeavors and the future endeavors of GIZ, this could be kind of integrated that with and we work together going forward? Over to you, Rajiv.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing this approach, this analytical tool. I think when we look at India in terms of the 22 major river basin systems, we're also looking at something like 15 major agroclimatic zones with 72 subzones. So, like you said, the diversity is really immense. And so if we take a decision support analytical tool like this, its application, of course, is limited by the granularity of the data. So if we are looking at about 100 hectares as one pixel size, I think it is good enough to give some ideas on risk and resilience and what to do there. But therefore, for it to be really used, localized, used, applied, it must connect to existing ongoing processes so that it's also able to leverage and impact on what we are already doing, rather than a need to look for new and very limited resources that may be available to do corrective actions. So from that perspective, I think the work that we've done with Ministry of Rural Development and Ministry of Jal Shakti to come to a point where almost 269,000 Gram Panchayats of India have a remote sensing and GIS-based basic watershed planning, which is being used as a basis for implementing watershed and the rural development activities, starts becoming an interesting place where the CRI analysts can be layered over it. So once we layer it over that, what could easily, and looking at the governance context of India, of course, the buying at a national level with the ministries would be important, and obviously Ministry of Jal Shakti would lead in a major way at a national level. But also Ministry of Rural Development would need to be also brought in. But as soon as we go to a state level, even a topic like water gets divided between 4 to 5 departments. So there, I think we feel that the lead should be with Water Resources Department in different names in different states. They should take this analysis that is done, or get this analysis done, and then take it down to the district level. We know that at the district level, the district collector's institution is very, very strong, or is at least able to really convert the different developmental programs, interventions, and departments. So, especially when we talk about a multi-sectoral approach, that is the layer at which this analysis can really inform. Now, what would it do there? Possibly, what it could do is that all of the plans that we're talking about are more or less integrated at a district level. They can even go down to a block level to look at block plans. And then they can see from a risk perspective, the plans that have already been done, have they taken care of the risks that are being projected, the scale of risks, the speed of risks? Also, in terms of the activities that are planned, is the aspect of resilience as an opportunity? So we need to mitigate against the risks and adapt and make sure that the activities that are planned there in terms of adaptation are actually aligned to what is being projected. So I think from the Godavari experience that you showed, the high risk, low adaptation areas, one would need to first of all look at those district and block plans, help the district authorities and implementation agencies to reprioritize. And that would immediately add a huge value to what is being done. Back to you, Dr. Sikka.
Thank you very much, Rajiv. And I think you made very valid points. And going forward, when we are kind of more confident with this complete process of development, and even in between also we can engage through GIZ. In some of those places, we are already working on VASCA and maybe other things, and drill it down to within this Godavari basin. We take a particular catchment or a watershed and take a particular district, and then I think we can work through you to pilot it, to validate it at a local level. So perhaps that is something that I will come back to you as we kind of move forward, because you already have your presence there with the state governments. So thank you very much. And now I move on to Nitin. So Nitin, now based on the CEW's experience, from a policy perspective, how can the knowledge products such as this, what we are talking about, the CRI, in your view, can be effectively integrated into the existing water and land management frameworks in India, across India, or in particular states? What are your takes on that? Over to you, Nitin.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sikka, and thank you to IWMI for inviting us to this particular panel discussion, and which is very relevant. And it was also nice to hear Giriraj and Sahana's presentation. I think it might be one of its kind of index at a catchment scale that I actually looked at. Now, of course, healthy catchments really mean healthy water systems, be it surface water, groundwater, and which in turn also means that we are moving towards water security, food security, and also livelihood security or improvement. Now, the point is that, how we mainstream this risk assessment, which is done at different scale. For instance, EMI has done at the, at the basin scale. There are risk assessment being done at the watershed scale. There are risk assessment being done at the administrative scale. We have been doing some risk assessment also at the city scape and, sometimes at the district scale. What is important to understand is that when we talk about basin or a catchment, there are several agencies which are involved. So, for example, if we talk about soil and moisture conservation, it might be the Department of Land Resources, which is under Ministry of Rural Development. If we talk about agriculture, water management, then Ministry of Agriculture will come in. If we talk about water resource management development as a whole, then Ministry of Water Resources plays an important role. Now, but the risk assessment that has been done at any scale will remain relevant for all of them. It is not that it is relevant for one ministry and not relevant for other. The real challenge would be that how we get all these institutions, ministries, and department on board at a common platform, so that they can be informed, on the relevancy of this risk indexing that has been done. That is one. Dr. Sikka, I would also like to highlight our effort, our combined effort in this fair, where we are trying to address the policy coherence aspect by bringing in, different such department. And this is where, the similar kind of effort might be needed if we really have to mainstream such risk assessment and then prioritizing the interventions. The second aspect that I would highlight is, we have done this assessment. We know what is causing higher risk or what is, increasing the resilience. Now, can we, kind of pick out, these parameters or factors that are driving the risk and start addressing them? Now, in some cases, those might be natural factors which are beyond our control. So there, it seems the planning or let's say the preparation would be important aspect to do. But there might be certain factors like land use changes that are we experiencing, or the disruption of drainages that are happening in the catchment. Now this is where the policy effort can be concentrated, and accordingly the policymakers can be informed that, see, it is not about your independent or individual policies, but it is about the comprehensive policy for a basin, for a catchment, that can make difference in the way water, soil, and of course the livelihoods can be improved. So this is how we should try to mainstream it. And as some of the other panelists have also highlighted, in India we have a very unique position where water is both a state and and under the central list. So we really need to find ways out of getting different agencies on board and try to help them in undertaking and getting benefited from this risk assessment, and also contributing to the global goal on adaptation, which was accepted at COP last year.
Right, so thank you very much. I think now I see that we are left with only 5 minutes. So I'm not sure if, or maybe if I can go back to all of you real quick, last minute, 1 minute pitch if you can say. So Marcela, just half to 1 minute, last minute pitch, what you would like to say, anything about the success stories, WTR, or anything. I will not ask if you, please, Marcela.
If we have to take it, if we have to work on this, the resilience of catchments, it must begin with the communities that live within. The whole future depends on them and the governance. And here I would say is, we need to take science back to the community. And I would also like to add, we need to get the catchment in perspective, the natural base in perspective, and get the different authorities, even if they are beyond districts, to work together on a catchment basis.
All right, thank you. Sharad?
Yeah, so I would like to mention one success story and one not success story. In terms of success story, the studies showed that Upper Ganga catchment is facing degradation in terms of loss of biodiversity, as well as very small flow during lean season. So studies were conducted, and it was found that some tributaries are contributing a lot to biodiversity. So one recommendation was that these tributaries should be left in pristine conditions, and then e-flows were assessed and made a part of decision making so that environment can be improved.
So I think your time is done now. So otherwise I'll be depriving of others. So I move to Dr. Chaudhary.
Thank you very much. I will be very quick. Only 2 points I would like to make here. The first point would be taking into consideration the policy dialogues. Developing this kind of indices is fine, but unless simultaneously we have policy conversation, it is not going to be upscaled so quickly. And second important point, while doing so, the pilot scale implementation may not be at very high scale, but pilot scale implementation simultaneously with development of this index, standardization index, that will be the key of success. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much. I do agree with that. And so, Rajiv?
Maybe just to add that apart from as soon as we get enough evidence experience from the pilot, I think it'll be very important to immediately get on to the population scale use of this, because the time is not in our side. The damage is happening too fast. And I just want to rattle through a whole series of risk programs out there that an index like this can clearly, have an impact on. Engineering, every year we spend $8 billion. Watershed development, we spend $60 million. Atal Bhujal Yojana, we spend $80 million. Namami Ganga, we spend $250 million. Donors are there, civil society organizations are working. I think there's a huge groundswell of work happening out there, and it will be very important to have a connection to that, to advise it, and to put some effort into redirecting that in a way, because this is very unique in the world. So much resources being available.
Yeah, I got your point. It's a very valid point, and also connect with what Dr. Chaudhary mentioned. So over to you, Nitin.
Yeah, I think one of the ways of mainstreaming it is to get this risk assessment in the state action plan on climate change. There is a kind of a detailed chapter these days on adaptation, and this is based out of our experience, where we actually brought in this risk assessment approach, and then the recommendations were made on the basis of which regions have the highest risk and which have the lowest risk. This also helps state in prioritizing their investments. Thank you so much.
All right, so thank you very much, all of you. And just, I don't think that I have more than a minute or so. Otherwise, first of all, I thank all of you as a panelists for being very, very kind of exemplary in your responses, and all are very useful responses. And I do understand that the way this CRI has started, it's a unique thing as I get from all of you, and you have to do it one at the entire basin scale, but then we'll have to drill it down to a local scale with much more fine tuning of the ideas and detail. And I do agree with what you guys have mentioned about taking it at a pilot scale, and what Rajiv mentioned, that how best and we can do it with the ongoing schemes of the government and at that state and the district level. And so for that, what Dr. Chaudhary mentioned, the policy dialogue. Yes, we have to do the engagement with the policy planners and the district level officers. So this is something I think we should be doing it at the earliest. Once within our own group, we have kind of fine-tuned this entire process of CRI, because as I said, this is work in progress. And then we can take it forward with the GIZ and CW, that how best, and the ICR, that where and in which state, in which district we can take it, and for moving forward and testing it, validating it. And so I think this is something that really requires to be done. And when we are looking into this, we should also try and build up on what all we have been already doing rather than reinventing the wheel, because this is the main essence. That I think that will be and that should be our criteria going forward. So with this, I think so. Once again, I thank you all, and I thank Giriraj and Sahana for taking this forward, and the ICR CRIDA, who are our key potential partner in this regard from the ICAR and the DDG NRM. So once again, thank you all for being here with us, and you all have shared really wonderful insights, and we have made a note of it, and we will definitely be trying to see that how best we can internalize those. And very soon, I think we should try and do a policy level dialogue with the key stakeholders. Both when we do that, I guess you all will agree that we'll have some people from the central government, and whatever the state we select and the district will have key potential stakeholders from there. So if you feel that will be a right approach, yes or no?
Okay. Yeah, I think it will be. Yeah.
Agreed.
So this is what I think we will follow, and I think I'll then follow it up when I come back. So once again, thank you all for good thing. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you and bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.